Doors has a problem, a pretty big problem. One that, if left unchecked, could ruin the entire story and atmosphere of the game that has been built up for literal years now. Okay, that might be a little exaggeration, but still. Now, I've been wanting to make this video for a while, but I've never quite found the time to do so. Now, I think it's time to finally address this. Stop putting it off to the side once and for all, especially with the release of recent updates that have only exacerbated the issue. Now, the problem initially started with the release of the Hotel Plus update, specifically the introduction of the character El Goblino, and since then it's only grown in size. This is why I'm referring to this as the El Goblino problem, as it started with this one character. At this point, you may be wondering what my issue is with this character. What could El Goblino possibly have done to warrant a whole video discussing it? Well, in this upload, I'm going to be explaining the issue to all of you viewers, why it can be so detrimental, and what can be done to fix it. So, with all of that being said, let's begin. Alright, so what exactly is the El Goblino problem? Well, I want to first give you some backstory. A long while back, I was watching an interview somebody had with the creator of Pressure, a pretty infamous Doors-inspired game. The interview consisted of several criticisms of Doors, and how the Pressure developers attempted to alleviate those issues in their own game. As I watched, I noticed the creator of Pressure had a fundamental ignorance when it came to what was actually in Doors, and many of their interpretations were just entirely wrong or based on misinterpretation. That ignorance isn't the focus of this video and deserves a discussion of its own. However, among the many points this individual stated in their criticisms of Doors, there is one that really stuck with me. One criticism that I decided to dive into, and what I found was that not only was it true, but it also was the start of a chain of even bigger problems. That criticism was how El Goblino, as well as Jeff's shop, are shoehorned into the game. You see, one of the main rules the developers follow when creating Doors is to keep up the immersion of the game. This means they try to make everything fit with each other, so everything feels like one coherent experience without random additions that take away from the atmosphere. In recent updates, a dedicated effort was made to make the new characters and entities actually fit the environment they are located in. This can most obviously be seen in the outdoors, where all the new entities and characters are based on things found outside, which fits the theme of the floor. The trend can also be seen in Floor 2, where all the new entities added in that floor are specifically based on underground dwelling or sewer dwelling characteristics. It also appears this philosophy will be present in the new room's overhaul, as one of the new entities is specifically based on that floor's characteristics. This is an amazing quality for Doors to have, as it makes the whole experience feel coherent. So what's the problem then? Well, prior to the release of Floor 2, this design philosophy was practically non-existent. It doesn't take a genius to figure out that all the original hotel entities don't actually fit the hotel environment, they're just random monsters. The same is true for what is found in the room subfloor, although, as I said, that is going to change when the subfloor is overhauled. The back door technically sticks to a theme, that being many of its entities are scrapped content that have been re-implemented, but design-wise they don't really follow any strict theme. Now, all of these entities, despite not technically fitting into their environments, have established themselves as decent characters in the game that don't really take away from the horror experience. So what if a bright green face is chasing you? It's a scary monster. You'd be scared if it was hotel themed. This tolerance of the more unfitting traditional entities in the game practically covers every single entity that has been added prior to the release of Floor 2, except for one specifically, that being El Goblino. The creator of Pressure wasn't wrong when they said Jeff's shop was shoehorned into the game. It truly feels like it was. The entirety of the hotel and the mines is incredibly tense, and then all of a sudden it's immediately broken up by an overly cheerful shop with unnecessarily friendly inhabitants. El Goblino visually contrasts with the surrounding environment so much that they stick out like a sore thumb. This unfittingness also extends to Jeff, whose actions feel way too friendly for the more grim and dangerous atmosphere of Doors. It's almost off-putting in a way, and as much as I like the Jeff Shop characters, you can't deny that they do feel shoehorned in. Bob is really the only one that actually fits, given how they are a literal rotting skeleton, which is naturally unsettling. Now, I did say that there does exist tolerance for how the original Doors entities don't fit their environment, and that is true to some degree here. I, for one, am completely fine with El Goblino's more friendly dialogue. However, Jeff and especially El Goblino in their current state really just feel like filler characters with no real purpose, and that takes away from the supposed horror experience of the game severely. Now, for a while, El Goblino and Jeff were really the only offenders of this break of immersion. However, that changed with the release of the Christmas event. This update added Kringle, who although visually fits perfectly into the event, has absolutely atrocious dialogue that completely breaks the immersion of the event. Stuff like that should be reserved for April Fool's events only, not actual gameplay with canon implications. Some item skins, such as the Kitty Bundle, also break the game's immersion. However, item skins are entirely optional features, so players willingly choose to have the horror atmosphere of the game removed if they please. Entities like Kringle, El Goblino, and Jeff aren't optional features, they're integrated directly into the gameplay, and that is where the issue arises. Now, like I said, the developers have been doing an amazing job making it so entities fit their environment in recent updates. And although Kringle could be considered a one-time fluke that doesn't need changing given how Christmas is over, the Jeff Shop entities will be present in every main floor, meaning they'll continue to break the immersion as long as the game keeps updating. So how could this be remedied? Well, obviously, I don't want to just remove these entities. Instead, I feel they could be reworked to fit the game's atmosphere better whilst retaining their iconic identities. Let's start with Jeff. Visually, I think this entity is fine. They utilize the fear of the unknown to make the player imagine what disgusting creature hides in the darkness. It's just their mannerisms seem way too cheerful for the mood Doors has. To combat this, I think the cheerfulness could be spun into horror by revealing it's all fake. El Goblino implies in his dialogue that Jeff kills people who shoplift. Why not add that feature into the game for real? Imagine that if you attempt to purchase an item you don't have the funds for repeatedly, Jeff just breaks his cheery persona and brutally mauls you. That would imply Jeff's entire mood is a mere illusion to attract customers, adding a dark spin to the entity without removing any features. Animations such as Jeff occasionally becoming impatient or angry if you don't tip could also reveal a dark side of the entity. Given how they are technically a squid, I think they could also periodically make wriggling or squishing noises to make players feel somewhat uncomfortable in their presence. All of this allows Jeff to better fit the grim atmosphere of the game without taking away from the effort already put into the entity. As for El Goblino, integrating them into the environment was a bit more tricky. Personality-wise, I think El Goblino is fine. He reminds me of those characters who try to make the best of a horrible situation by adding the element of humor. The issue is his design. Sure, it fits his personality, but not really the atmosphere of the game. He has barely any clothes on, which doesn't really make sense considering how exposed he is to the dangers of the main floor. So, I decided to redesign El Goblino to better fit the experiences he described in his dialogue. I took inspiration from classic goblin designs, who depict the creatures as scavengers that use scraps as armor. I imagine El Goblino would be similar, scavenging the hotel for resources to defend himself with. If you look closely, this new version of El Goblino is not only dirtier to appear slightly more unsettling, but he also uses hotel curtain pieces as a belt and band around his foot. Monument shell fragments are shoulder plates, as well as a fork and spoon from the dining hall as weapons. He also uses a trash bag from the sewers to store scavenged items in. El Goblino could never 100% fit into doors given how they are a bright red goblin, but by integrating physical assets from the main floors into their design, they can be made to fit the environment a little more. All in all, I don't think the Jeff Shop entities are bad additions, they just feel unfitting, but with some alterations in their designs and functionality, they could be made to fit the more unsettling and horror nature of doors. Making Jeff occasionally be a murderous beast, or El Goblino be a scavenger aren't new things. The game pretty much already establishes that they are. It's just now the characters themselves reflect those attributes, which results in them feeling much more at home within doors alongside the other entities. I think the developers are doing an excellent job at keeping up the immersion in the latest updates. It's just that given how these entities specifically will appear in future floors, I think it's time that they're finally made to fit those future floors. Additionally, regarding something like Kringle's dialogue, just keep that for April Fools, not in the main game, as that breaks immersion pretty heavily. Anyways, this video is getting pretty long, so with all of that being said, thank you all for watching and I hope you enjoyed.